Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Hope everyone can hear me and see me as usual. Let me know if there's any issues in my audio or video. Hey, Krista already in here saying the stream sounds like it could be interesting. Sounds could be deceiving, Krista, but we'll see. I don't have any particular programming notes. This is kind of one of those ones I don't from sort of the backlog, if you will. I see stuff posted in various outlets, Reddit, sometimes Twitter, sometimes Facebook, sometimes wherever. And then if it looks like something that I think I would enjoy seeing, and of course I think you guys would like to see, then I will reach out to the authors, publisher, and say, hey, would you mind sending one to me? Sometimes they laugh in my face. Sometimes they reply with their silence. But then, and other times they actually do send me something. And in this case, this was sent by I forget whom it was. Sivad's Sanctum were kind enough to send this to me. Krister says we can hear and see you clearly. Well, great. That may be a good or bad thing, but good, I guess. They were kind enough to send this to me, so let's take a look at it. I think we can immediately see from the cover, not so much the cover itself, but at the bottom, the volume 1 of 3 booklets, that maybe they're going with a sort of 3 brown books vibe. I only have the PDFs. I don't know how this would be printed, if it's going to be in that same whatever A4, A5, whatever the 3 original brown books type sizes, probably that kind of zine size. I'm not sure about that, but it kind of, just looking at the aspect ratio of the pages, it would seem something like that. But this is book 1, which is Men at Arms. Get some tables here. Armor, shields, missile weapons. That font, I like that font, but like a lot of those Gothic fonts, because at first I was reading this, is it missile? Is it massive? It is missile. Missile weapons, we have some stuff there. I don't know if there's anything to take from it. We've got ranges, properties. H means that strength damage bonus applies to attacks, which is kind of nice to see that for longbows. You get, if you're strong, that factors in. Also, I guess if you're throwing stones. And then maybe we could also notice that we're using some kind of damage reduction, not armor class, and some kind of simple weight. And then I guess we can also glean pace, maybe as a speed. We'll see. And then also some kind of damage reduction. And then, of course, we're also noticing the costs are very simple. We are not given gold, silver, bronze pieces, just flat cost. Oh, and this was words and layout by John Davis, art by the Dead, inspired by Kanabo, Cairn, Troika, and Knave. I'll just read a little bit of the intro. Don't need to read the whole thing, but let's see what they say about the game itself. Helm is a role-playing game inspired by dark fantasy and sword and sorcery fiction, typically set in worlds resembling that of our own Middle Ages, 5th to 15th centuries. Players take on the role of bloody men-at-arms, carving out an existence in the shadow of a crumbling empire. In this day, craven nobles play at conquest and sacrifice countless soldiers to the war machine, fueling what has come to be known as the Ruination. Masterless warriors seeking to profit from the nigh endless discord, falling with armies as shock troops and supplementary forces. An integral theme of this genre is human nature and morality as one struggles between being a good human being or falling into madness and evil. Characters in Helm cannot save the Empire, but they might be able to save their own skins. Okay. Good stuff. I like that. And I like here that they at least touch on that there might be or the spiritual struggle, perhaps. We have a physical struggle, just surviving, warring, all that stuff. But then there's also, we can, I suppose, depending on how our game is, get into some of the moral and spiritual sides of the struggle. And I like they at least mention that. And then they do mention here in this other paragraph, they're not trying to be accurate to the Middle Ages, so they're not trying to give you gender or ethnic or whatever restrictions, anything like that, which is good. I almost think, hey, bold that, because people want to find offense with everything, and I could see them not reading that, and then later on in the book saying like, but, how can this be? It simply is. Men-at-Arms generation. I'm wondering from this, maybe they're going from a different thing, because it seems like from this that the men-at-arms is like in this particular booklet of the game is just about fighters. I guess we'll see if men-at-arms encompasses just all player characters, and regardless if you're a wizard or a rogue, or a cleric, they're still calling you men-at-arms. But it'd be kind of neat if each booklet was about a different class, so that you could really concentrate, if you wanted to, on just having a game about fighters, basically, or about different sorts of clerics, or about thieves. I guess we'll just have to see. We haven't gotten to a table of contents yet, so we don't know. So this quick generation, we can retrieve a character sheet that's found in the back. Great, we're going to roll 1d6 6 times and assign those 6 numbers to different zones of your men-at-arms. Oh, this is interesting. So you don't have, I guess there are no attributes, but you're going to have, and you can apply them yourself, but your head, your trunk, which would just be your sort of chest, your main body area, your main you know, that what do they call it? Center mass. Your torso, chest and torso gets one. Left arm, left leg, and right leg. If it is kind of strength and stuff, that would be interesting. If you could have one super strong arm and one really weak arm. Hey, Elfbait, thanks for hanging out. Now, after we've done that, we generate saves based on those scores. So intelligence is equal to your head, constitution is equal to your trunk. You sum up your both arms for your strength, and you sum up both legs for your speed, which is clever. Then you're going to generate abilities based on saves as determined by your men-at-arms, which I guess we'll have to see. So we roll a d6 equal to intelligence to determine starting luck. I think what that means is if we had rolled a 4 for our head, that becomes our intelligence. Then we roll 4d6, and that's how much luck we get. Then we would take whatever our constitution is and double it to get our injury maximum. And then we're going to look at some table to determine our damage bonus due to strength. There was a motorcycle outside. Hopefully you guys don't hear it, but man, it's like right in my ear. And then pace is equal to our speed. And then we're going to roll a d6 to determine our starting coin and purchase equipage from the inside covers, which we saw one, and I guess there's a matching one on the other side. So there's just kind of coin. And now we can take that strength and figure out what our bonus is. It goes from -1 to +3. Fine. Now we get to, I guess there is no table of contents. Sivad Sanctum, add a table of contents. If only just for me. This is a dark fantasy, how to play. This is a dark fantasy role-playing game. One player, dubbed the Quartermaster, presents a scenario, and the other players, the men-at-arms, take turns describing how they carry themselves in the situation and around each other. In turn, the Quartermaster describes how the world reacts to the men-at-arms. This continues until someone incurs a save or an encounter. Here we have basically a men-at-arms full head to toe in chainmail. We have some best practices listed here. The game is a conversation between the men-at-arms and the world or worlds around them. Play to find out what happens and how it happens. Ask questions, take notes, draw diagrams, write in pen. Not sure why write in pen, but sure. Work together, make plans, recruit or hire help, get a pack animal. The dice are not your friends. If you don't have to roll, don't. When you roll the dice, you are bound by that outcome. That's a good, I think I did a whole video about that ages ago. That I think this was more player facing, because as the GM, roll as many dice as you want, basically. But that you shouldn't be angling as a player to roll dice. Because roll dice just is going to bring in a chance of failure. That, you know, my goals as a player was always to how far can I get before I have to start rolling dice. Fight unfairly, lay ambushes, hit below the belt, run away. Strive for victory, but revel in your defeats. Live, die, roll a new men-at-arms, get back into the thick of things, strive for inclusion over realism. I think these are all good. I almost wonder if that could be. I mean, it's nice here they have it in the how to play because you're more likely to read it. And part of me is thinking this is even, I wouldn't even mind this kind of bolded and highlighted and stuck more near the front. But maybe it's wise to put it here because putting stuff in the intro just means that a lot of people are just going to skip on by it. On to saves. Trivial actions succeed automatically. When you describe your men-at-arms doing something dangerous where failure means consequences and uncertainty lurks around every corner, roll 2d6 equal to or under the appropriate save. If you do, You succeed without complication. If you roll over, you still succeed, but there's a complication, a twist, or a setback as detailed by the quartermaster. If you have the upper hand in any situation, add +1 to your target number. If there is a drawback, subtract 1. So the interesting thing about these saves, and I'm just going to roll back just because I want to see those saves. So the saves, the naming of these things is kind of interesting because saves are what I would think of as abilities, and that but they have abilities that they are calling like luck, constitution. I mean, constitution is kind of an ability. It's just the way they're splitting this up. Because I'm just so used to I got to pull myself out of the kind of D&D-ness of things. But the saves are essentially equivalent to your roll under attributes that you would have in a BX type system. So if you're doing something that requires smarts, you are trying to roll under intelligence, roll under constitution, roll under strength, roll under speed. So that stuff is fine. I guess the interesting thing about it is that we're doing a fail forward here just by default, or that's just how the system works. You can't out and out fail. You're going to roll 2d6. If you roll under, then you just succeed as you would in a different kind of system in your sort of ye old BX inspired OSR system. However, if you fail to save, you're still going to succeed, but there's a complication, a twist, or a setback. I hope that we'll get some guidance as to how we're supposed to adjudicate those. How dire is the setback? Because they're still going to succeed, but if they fail by a lot, does that mean we're able to bring in a really bad consequence? Is it supposed to be... How are we supposed to judge what the appropriate consequence is for these fail forwards? Or are we just supposed to figure it out? It would be nice to... I guess this is where I like to know for a system like this that's operating somewhat differently than the systems that I'm used to, knowing kind of what they envision. So here's where I would love to have an example of, say, the thief picking a lock. Or the man-at-arms, because we don't even know if there are thieves. The man-at-arms picks a lock, is trying to pick a lock, they fail. So in that case, what kind of consequences is appropriate? Having an encounter on the other side, having them take a little bit of damage. What are we looking for here? Or maybe even a question that probably we need to think about also is how many of these rolls do we think we're doing in a game? Because that will kind of also, I think, will give us some information about how much failure or what kind of bad consequences on failure. If we're making a lot of rolls and there are going to be lots of fails, then maybe having it be damage just simply wouldn't be appropriate because we would kill our men-at-arms when they're just trying to spot stuff and open doors. Or if we're really only doing, you're thinking there's only going to be a couple, 2-3 rolls per person per session, then as a GM, I might, or as the quartermaster, I might feel more free to say, okay, you picked the lock, but the lock falls on your foot, take 1 damage kind of thing. On to inventory. You have a number of inventory slots equal to your strength save. Most items take up 1 slot, with the exception of armor, shields, and weapons. Small items such as coins and ammunition can be bundled together to take up 1 slot. Saves in Helm are intentionally left open-ended to apply in most situations. The quartermaster has final say as to what save is appropriate for the matter at hand. Okay, I guess I should not have read that. I should have probably read the top and then the bottom, but it wasn't clear. Anyhow, so a bit more about saves. They're open-ended. Now we're going to get a little bit more information. Intelligence is for concentration, resisting magic, and also lore. Constitution is for resisting poisons, disease, and also cold. Strength is for climbing, lifting, and grappling. And speed is for dodging, sneaking, and picking pockets. Just as an aside, and it's not something because all or most games do this, I don't like just a speed that's also speed and dexterity and some amount of skill. I kind of feel like I like having skills for that. I don't think that picking a lock is really about how fast you run or even about how dexterous your fingers are. It's really all about that knowledge of locks. I mean, if you go to the average locksmith or someone who's an excellent lockpick, they may not be fast. They may not even be quick-fingered. They just know how, through training and expertise and probably some different assortment of natural advantages, have become great at picking locks. And there is my mini TED talk on I don't like having agility / dex / speed as one attribute. I don't like it in D&D either. It's endemic in the field, I would say. All right. Next up, we have combat. When rolling to inflict pain upon another, you deal damage equal to the first digit of your 2d6 roll. The first digit of your 2d6 roll. Apply your damage bonus. Hold on. Let me read that again. When rolling to inflict pain upon another, you deal damage equal to the first digit of your 2d6 roll. Apply your damage bonus. Okay, I think maybe, and then apply your damage bonus, or plus your damage bonus. Location is determined by the second digit and the zones of the body. Suffer damage equal to your opponent's pain ability on their turn. All right, so there's a lot to unpack there. Paragraph. Okay, so we're rolling 2d6s, which isn't a given. I'm just trying to scroll back here. So I guess so it's a 2d6 roll, which is like saves. We're using our strength, I guess, for most. Or at least let's just say it's a melee attack, so we know we're using our strength. So we would add, let's say we get 7. Let's just say +1. So we'd roll our 2d6. Let's say we rolled a 5 and a 2. The 5 becomes the damage +1 for our strength. That would be 6. And then the 2 would be the location. We don't have zones of the body yet, so I guess we don't know where that would be yet. I might like to have that diagram here so that I can reference it to get a better idea. And then we've got some kind of pain ability. I don't think we've seen pain ability. Is that something that... We got pace, damage bonus. So I don't know what a pain ability. Okay, so we don't know what that is yet. Mark injuries as the zones of your body are reduced to 0. You can sustain injuries up to your maximum, upon which you have succumbed to your wounds and died. Roll a new man-at-arms. The quartermaster should introduce this new combatant as soon as possible so as not to exclude anyone from playing. All right, so I saw the injury maximum, which was equal to our double our constitution. So our trunk and constitution are the same, so 1 to 6. So the most injury maximum, the highest injury maximum could be is 6. But we don't really know what injuries are yet, but the most you could possibly have is 6. Survival. Mark a segment of your survival clock when you survive a combat encounter. Erase a segment of your survival clock to make an additional attack, prevent 1 point of damage, overcome an injury, survive past your last injury. All right, so you're having a clock that looks like it's going to start as empty, and this is where I probably would have been good to have the character sheet in front of me. Some kind of clock, it's empty, we're filling in segments, maybe it's like Trivial Pursuit pie pieces, I don't know, that's a horribly dated reference, but it's all I've got at the moment. And then you can essentially spend 1, so it's basically a currency you're getting. You get 1, and then you can spend 1. You can spend 1 to make an attack if you need to. You can spend 1 to prevent some damage. You can spend 1 to overcome an injury. We don't know what that means quite yet. And we could spend 1 to survive. I guess if we have gotten to our max and we're going to take that 1 more injury, we can spend 1 to, I guess, not die. Pace. Weapon ranges and movement speeds are measured in paces represented by squares in a grid pattern. If your pace, as determined by speed, is 5, then you can move 5 squares on your turn. If your your long bow has a medium range of 28, then you can attack an enemy 28 squares away. All right, that's pretty self-explanatory. And then luck represents your man-at-arms fortune and intuition. As you play, your luck will fluctuate with each passing day. You may spend as many points of luck as you need to pass saves outside of combat. Each day, you may recover 1d3 points of luck. Upon reaching 0 points of luck, your man-at-arms suffers a grave misfortune as determined by your quartermaster. All right, so you don't want to spend all your luck if you can help it, but perhaps you have to. I want to say you get a fair amount of luck because luck was equal to a bunch of d6s depending on your intelligence. So if you're really smart, or you have a really good head score, let's say you got 66, then yeah, you could end up with 36 luck as your super max if you were really lucky, I guess. A couple of these things are interesting because it bundles together things that are kind of powerful. You want a good trunk score because you always want more constitution, so you want to have a high trunk score. Now, I suppose you could say on the one hand, as seems to often be with, say, D&D 5th edition, people look at intelligence as a dump stat. Clearly, you do not want intelligence, if you can help it, to be a dump stat here because it's directly going to affect not only your saves for a few things, but also that luck, which seems to be super important. So while it's interesting, it also means that you get these things that kind of smart people are lucky. On average, smart people are going to be luckier than non-smart people, which in terms of fiction is usually the opposite. Usually it's the people who aren't book smart wizard types who are the lucky ones, and the smart ones tend to not be lucky a lot. So that's an interesting thing that they've tied together. Now, it doesn't have to be true. You could have someone with 1d6 rolls a 6 for their luck, and someone with 3d6 rolls a 1, a 1, and a 2, and only has 4 luck. So it's not absolute, but you're going to tend to have this. The people who put their highest rolls into intelligence are going to have a lot of luck, which seems to be a pretty good or big or important currency. Time. In Helm, time is measured in rounds, turns, and watches. A round measures time while in combat. A turn measures time while exploring. And let's see. And then a watch measures time while traveling. Every turn, roll a d6. On a 1, the men-at-arms have encountered someone or something as determined by the quartermaster. Basically, your wandering encounter check. Your wandering monster check. I'm guessing that the turns you're only doing it while exploring. So, because if your watch, which is about 6 hours, basically 1 hex, then that would be a whole ton of turns. But do they mean that every watch you're also rolling? I wonder if they mean that it's not going to be every round. I guess I'm just going to take it as what they mean. So only when you're doing turns are you rolling that d6. For watches, there must be something else you're doing. Travel, I mean, in terms of wandering monsters. Travel, your men-at-arms may travel 1 hex per watch. Difficult terrain such as mountains, oceans, swamps, etc. requires 2 watches per hex. Short rest takes 1 turn. Now that was it for travel. On to healing. Short rest takes 1 turn. Draw from your pipe and take a swig from the jug. Overcome 1 injury. I guess, does overcoming mean that it's gone? I'm not sure. Don't know. A long rest takes 1 watch. A long night sweating through your sheets. Recover 1 point in each zone of your body. I like that. 1 turn. It's interesting because there's nothing. So I usually like to limit how many of those you can do in your day. Basically, my first instinct is to say every 1 short rest between 2 long rests, you can do this, and then you can have 1 long rest in a day. So that you can't, but maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe in this game, hey, if you want to take 6 turns and overcome 6 injuries and spend that hour, fine. Every one of those, we're rolling a die. So that's 6 turns you're doing. It pretty much means that you're going to get 1 encounter, which might very well wipe out your rest. So maybe the math all kind of works out. I'm not sure. And you're not getting hit points back, or your points, or they don't really call it what. You're not getting your body points or whatever, your health. You're not getting health back. You're just getting off of injuries. But we don't really know what an injury is yet. So I don't know how dire your situation is with injuries, or if it's just a number that you just have to keep below your max. Advancement, erase 8 segments of your survival clock to apply 1 point to any zone of your body to a max of 6. Adjust saves and abilities accordingly. That's cool. So you basically, as you're filling up this clock, if you can get enough of that currency without having to spend it, or you're able to make more than you spend over time, and you get 8, you can go ahead and increase one of your stats. And I guess it looks like there's no leveling. You were just getting physically and mentally stronger, which this then affects everything else. Hiring mercenaries. In a town or city, you can spend 1 day, 4 watches, putting out the call for those seeking gainful employment. The size of the community will determine the breadth of mercenaries at your disposal, as smaller towns will not always have experienced fighters in their midst. 2, the larger cities will have a wider assortment of hires, but often at higher rates of payment. And then we get some melee weapons, a whole bunch. A, ignore opponent's shield, if any. B, let's see, hold on a minute. Oh, these are all specials. I see properties. So we got weapons, how much they cost, how much they weigh. Battle axes, hand axes, clubs, war clubs, daggers, flails, flamberges, garottes, halberds, war hammers, so on and so forth. The most they cost, a broadsword is 6. Everything else, nothing else costs more than 3 Why is a broadsword so much? That's interesting. Why is a broadsword? So we have long sword, short sword, and broadsword. Do we need long and broad? And why is broad and long different costs and weight and weights? Not weights. Sorry, just different costs. Same weight, different costs, same damage. I don't know. Let's see. What is A? Okay, so flails can ignore shields. Also can dismount a rider. I like these. I like these properties. I don't know if I don't know if I would say that a flail would I don't know if I see a flail. I mean, the thing is, I think that I read this and I guess it's an interesting idea that the concept that flails might not be real weapons. There's real debate whether flails as weapons existed at all, or even if they existed, if there was just kind of a one-time weird outlier that somebody had a flail, but it's become in fiction a weapon that was never really something that existed, which is fascinating, and it makes me want to try to track down where was the first time that a flail showed up in a story as a weapon, and are there even any extant examples of flails as weapons, even in the kind of one-off where some farmer just grabbed something because they needed it and they were doing threshing or whatever. I think flails were useful, or whatever, the pounding stuff to whatever, what was it, to separate the wheat from the chaff, or whatever it is that flails were used for, and then decided to go run into some fighters swinging it over their head, screaming like a madman. It would be really neat. So that's kind of a curious thing. And then here, I don't know that I would give the flail the dismount rider. I'm not sure. It's a ball on a chain, and granted, you can hit hard. I don't know that that's delivering enough force with the size of the ball on the chain to knock somebody off the rider, off a horse, unless it was some kind of crit or got their zone 0, which would be the same for any of those weapons. I think if a flail can knock somebody off a horse, then why can't those other weapons? Why can't a battle axe knock somebody off a horse? I get the club, but was the flail is you're separating, it's really just you don't have you can't put your full weight into the flail in terms of like grounding you there like a spear, because it's on that chain, so the chain separates that. I just don't see it happening. Hey, Brian Smith. Elfbase says a two-handed Hussite flail. Elfbase says the Hussites use them. I'm gonna have to look that up, and I'm happy to, it's funny. I'm looking at this, and this is maybe the one, because I think we're already at the end of the book, and I'm only a half hour in. Maybe we could look up some stuff on flails, because I am interested, and it looks like I've got time. Let's see, what else do we have? B, Morning Stars, +1 damage versus opponents wearing plate. I'm okay with that, but I would also want to give it to the clubs. Clubs should also do that. Clubs, or where's maces? Do maces do it? No, maces don't. That's some weird stuff. Why does a Morning Star give damage to plate armor when maces, one of the things of the rise of maces was you had to use that kind of damage because you was harder to pierce plate, but you could certainly thwack them, and that concussive force from the mace would work. So some weird choices here, and what properties some of these weapons get. Okay, pikes get C. Okay, that's just a true two-handed weapon. Great. D, +1 damage reduction versus melee. That's kind of cool. E, double damage when set to retrieve a charge. Great, but then not F. Weapon dismounts a rider when doubles are rolled. Why wouldn't, if a pike you can set it against a charge, why wouldn't it also have F? Confusing me here. Confusing me. And then D and E. Anything that gets E, which is double damage when set to retrieve a charge, should also have the weapon dismounts rider. That makes no sense to me. Not a big deal, but God, that's pretty much the end of the book. So a really simple set of rules. We have here the character sheet. I like this. Also super simple. Here's our survival. It's got 8 pie pieces, so when you fill it up, you can spend it all. There's nothing to say you can't have more than 8. Maybe there would have been a nice thing in the rules that you can't get any more survival. If you filled it up, you can't get anything else. So you better spend it, or spend it on getting rid of injuries, or spending it on leveling up. Otherwise, there's no No more you can do. We just have a little inventory slot. We have these for just putting in your the points you have in these zones, which is recalling this is our only source of advancement. I almost wonder if this wouldn't be the game where I would want to give just instead of rolling for these, so that you could end up with somebody who has a bunch of sixes, which beyond the fact that they're going to be strong just means they have less advancement to do. Because once you get sixes across the board, you're through. There's no more advancement. I would almost say, give me like I don't know, 4-3-2, 4-3-3-2-1, something like that. 4-4-3-3-2-1, and place them around, or maybe 4-4-3-3-2-2. Throw them around there, and then every one of these has some room to grow, so you don't end up in some spot where nothing can help you. I like that you see how these things equate. I might have put here a little bit of what this is, because I think luck is actually the int d6, some kind of indication there. Just be good would help, and then some of these are about the same. But you can't get much simpler than that character sheet. Elfbait, who's already gone ahead and done some research, says that interesting research shows that the spikes on Horseman's flails, ball and chain, were more for traction and not for penetration. Oh, that is interesting. That is interesting. I do like the art. It's all, I'm guessing, public domain kind of woodcut stuff, but I really like that, and I'm going to be leaning into that as well. So I certainly can't fault them for using it. A really nice set. There's a few things that I think are missing, and I don't know what the intention is. So it's going to be very simple. No skills, no levels. You're just getting physically and mentally stronger over time. We don't have any idea what injuries are. I would have liked some detail. This is what injuries do. When you have these injuries, this is why they're bad. Maybe injuries can affect your different zones. You're already tracking your head, your chest and trunk, your arms and legs. So if you have an injury that's attached to one of those, have it affect something. Hey, if you have an injury to your legs, that slows your speed down, or it just reduces it. Give me something. Give me some more there, because the idea of injuries is really interesting, but it's just it ends up being just a name for another meta currency. We don't know anything about the world, and maybe it's a little bit out of scope, but given that they have some tantalizing bits about the Ruination and the Empire, I'd like to know more of what that is. We don't have any idea really of what kind of adventures we're doing. They mention hirelings, but no idea of what those hirelings are. They kind of seem to say they're mostly fighters, but they might, if they're not going to be fighters, I'd like to know what it is that we're doing. Is this something kind of a dark Arthurian thing where we're sort of masterless knights, which they mention, are masterless warriors, which kind of gives a Ronin-ish sort of vibe to it? Are we doing mostly overland stuff, and kind of what does that mean? Well, I'd like to have a bit of a sense of, with this system, what kind of adventures are they running? Maybe that's where, like, hey, give me a little starter adventure. Give me something. Tell me about what we're supposed to be doing. Because a lot of this seems interesting, but then when I think about maybe the kinds of games I want to run, I don't know if this gives me the kind of stuff I want. If I just want say a quick and dirty dungeon crawl, does this give me the kind of things I want for that? I'm not sure. It does give me some structure to exploration a little bit, but I had those already. Certainly it's kind of easier to roll up someone and go. For a one shot, I think it makes a lot of sense. We're not worried about progression anyway. I don't know if I love in this kind of system. I mean, it's not really different than BX in terms of skills, but I always think about what other things I could do with that. And certainly there's templates in BX for adding skills in terms of what the thief does, in terms of what the cleric does with turn undead, that I always feel like I could lean into. With this one, I'm not sure. I almost feel like with this kind of system, I'd like more, because here there's no, you're not, what's the word I'm looking for? It seems like it's exactly what it is. Like we're not, there's not an abstraction. Your strength is literally your two arms. So there's not that idea of strength can mean a bunch of different things. Well, no, it doesn't. It's exactly how the rating of left arm and the rating of your right arm is your strength. the rating of your left leg and the rating of your right leg is your speed. So something with that just hits me differently than something like a BX where it just kind of has strength, and we can envision that strength being in different ways, or speed, or your constitution and your hit points. This one, because of the way they've put it together, there is no abstraction. It is literally your constitution is equal to the strength of your basically the amount of points on your trunk, which directly equates to how much damage you can take to that unit before you die. It literally is body points is equal to this, which is equal to that. It just, the system kind of hits me a little bit differently, and then it makes me think like, well, I don't want everything to be that precise. I don't know. There's something, maybe it's just me. There's something in that, having that little bit of gray area where I could say like, well, hit points isn't just your health, right? Hit points is all these things. In this system, it's like, no, it is exactly your health, which is exactly this other thing. There's direct line from these things, right? Which is where you get to know granted, you're rolling dice, so there's always the off chance you don't get the distribution, but in average, the person whose head is thicker, who has more head points, is also the person who is smarter, who's also the person who is luckier, in pretty much a direct line. And I don't know if I love that. And I would like to see, maybe we have to wait until more of this comes out. It says 1 of 3, so I don't know if the other one's going to be a monster manual and a more of a setting book, or if it's going to be more classes. I don't know, but I'd like to see where the men-at-arms fit in, because I might like to look at more flavors, because the one thing here is, other than the fact that your stats are going to be different, which is going to make you some people stronger than others and some people slower than others, there's not a whole lot of differentiation other than equipment, pretty much, which I guess is not unlike, fighters don't have any, fighters, it's the same, but I with fighters, I feel like at least you have other classes. If you want to try something different, you can be a cleric, which is a fighter minus some things plus some other things, or you could be a rogue. Interesting. Though, I'm not, I guess it's kind of weird I'm saying that, but at the same time, I've played in games where we've all played the same class, and it's been fine. But maybe this one, because the scope seems to be pretty limited in what we're doing, again, it's something that sort of reaches and hits me in a different way. And that's where I love that the fiction were to get, or the stuff around the setting and kind of what you're expected to do with illuminate things. Because let's say in something like Pendragon, you may all be fighters, but you have different families and you have different goals, and there's all this stuff in the different, you're trying to do different things. And even in D&D, we might talk about different goals. Here, we don't get a sense of what the end game is. Sure, you're getting physically stronger, but there's no sense of you're working towards a particular goal, or even hinting at it, like you say in a BX, where it'll talk about domains or things that you can kind of reach towards if you want to, kind of what that looks like. So I'd like to see it. On the flip side is that it is extremely lightweight, very compact book. Well, I think everything you need, which I think is good. Obviously, I haven't played it, so I don't know how this stuff works out in play. But it is well put together. I'll be curious to see what more comes out. These other three with the other 2 of the 3 booklets. Brian Smith says it's a game with weapons. It is indeed. It is indeed a game with weapons. That is Helm. So let's look at Flails. So I don't have anything else, unless you guys have other things. We got 20 minutes or so. We might as well look at Flails. Let me open up a new window here. Oh, I will go to, I'll bring up the itch page. Oop. No, just go full screen. Oh, let me share that. See if there's anything else. Maybe we can get a bit of the, I don't know if there's, I didn't look on here before I streamed, so I don't know if there is a roadmap. Let's see. So here we go. Yes, I do own this. Let's go down to, okay, so here we go. Volume 2 will be quartermasters, and volume 3 will be campaigns. So the intention is for this all to be basically fighter focused. So we're no magic, either divine magic or sorceress magic, arcane magic, and no, and we don't have any details for how that stuff would fit in here. I guess that's maybe the other thing. It'd be nice to see. We don't have any We don't have any idea of what monsters look like. And that's maybe where I'd like to see more about the setting, kind of what's entailed. It feels very, I don't want to say realistic, but very low magic or even no magic. We're people fighting other people in kind of a pseudo, hey, the Roman Empire's fallen and we're picking up the pieces as the Dark Ages are upon us type deal. Are there things that we think about in fantasy games? Are there demons, devils? What is the religion? We don't have an idea. Is it sort of pagan or various natural religions and that sort of thing? In religions, a lot of cultural religions, are we going to have a dominant single cultural religion like Christianity? What's going on there? Does magic exist? Is this, they mentioned swords and sorcery, but we don't know. Are creatures, are there dark wizards and sorcerers and things out there, druids, that granted they're not player characters, but that have magic, and how does that interact with these things? We don't know. I think there's a hint in the saves that mentions, I think it might mention what saves are for. Let's see. Yeah, intelligence is for resisting magic, but we have no idea what magic looks like. And so I'd kind of like to know that, though I like to know it, but at the same time, it feels like you could take this and you would just have to figure out for the player side what saves you're going to use for different magic things. Is it all going to be intelligence saving against all magic, or if you want to have split it up into different things? And then, of course, you'd want to figure out, it might have been nice to have a note. Maybe this will be in the quartermasters is, okay, if I'm taking this and I want to use your normal OSR, I want to get BX, or I have the monster manual from first edition, and I want to quickly run and gun, and I want to have them face something out of the monster manual. How do I convert the damage and that rolls hit dice and damage to Helm? How does that work? Those are some things I'd probably like to know. It is $7.50, and you get the Men-at-Arms, 2 versions Men-at-Arms. One that's printer friendly, the normal one, and a character sheet. And it looks like we do have a development blog. We do have some questions. Let's see what they've got on the logs here. All right, so they just uploaded one. I think I uploaded mine after, or downloaded it. I think I did after that. So not sure if I got their tweak. Okay, it doesn't seem like there's much else. So there you go. So let's look at Flails. I want to see if I can find out. So a little postscript on did Flails. Here we go. Well, look at that, was fast. I like that in bold. Never existed. All right, well, here we go. A little story time. Since we finished Helm early, we get bonus coverage. This was posted on May 12th. Wow, look at that. Almost, oh my gosh. May 12th to May 12th. Only this was 5 years ago today, or 6 years ago today. Was it fate? Was it kismet that we would have this extra time to look at this particular article exactly 6 years after it was posted? I mean, that's uncanny. Tonka Todd. Hey, Tonka Todd, Team Todd in the house. It is indeed story time. All right. Posted by Paul B. Sturtevant at the Public Medievalist. Oh, they've got some new thoughts. Hold on a minute. So what are the new thoughts? Should I read the new one or the old one? Okay. Oh, all right. So it looks like, so I guess his first one's basically never existed. However, there's been we'll go to the updated one, which is called Solving the Curious Case of the Weapon That Didn't Exist, which he published a few months after the original one. I shall now read straight from the blog post. Back in May, I published an article here, which is the one we originally looked at, about the one-handed military flail that got a little bit of attention. And by a little bit of attention, I mean that it got about 200,000 unique page views. It wasn't Kim Kardashian's butt level of breaking the internet, but it sure broke me a little. And obviously this brought a lot of commenters as well, some with thoughtful, incisive criticisms, though to be expected, some not so much. I took the good faith comments into consideration and set about improving my ideas, and turning over other rocks looking for the real origins of the one-handed military flail. For example, it helped me realize that the real issue isn't that the weapon is impractical to the point of nonsense, though it sure is. The issue is that the only ones that exist are a scant few very late medieval manuscript images and a few museum pieces that were either never meant for the battlefield or 19th century fakes. Whether or not the weapon might have worked is irrelevant when faced with the fact that there's no proof that it was ever actually a thing. Right, so I guess the big takeaway is, yes, there are examples of some things in a few places. I'm just going to pump this up because I know people have said they like it bigger. But that they, just because someone made one in the 18th or 19th century, or just because someone printed one in the manuscript, didn't mean that people actually used it. And just because it might work in theory, that, oh yeah, if you put a stone on the end of a stick, like basically like a nunchuck with a ball on one end of it, doesn't mean that people actually did it, which I think is all fair, because you can definitely see, especially on the internet, people go down rabbit holes of, no, but look, it is an effective weapon, and that's not the point. The point is, did people actually use this, or was it something that somebody thought up and seemed kind of cool, but never actually was produced in any meaningful way for military usage? But I've found one possible origin story for the weapon. I'll give you a spoiler. While it was certainly a weapon that never existed in the forms we are most familiar with today, there is an answer to be found on the steppes of Eastern Europe, Russia, and Mongolia. And thanks to the good people over at Medieval Warfare magazine, I've had another crack at it. Check out my article, The Medieval Weapon That Never Existed, the Military Flail, in their latest issue. Oh, no. No! I thought this was the article. This is not the article. Can I get to it? No! Oh, no. Am I denied? Let me see. All right, so we're going to have to try something else. Can I get to it? I thought that was the whole article. And it's just a tease. Oh, Paul B. Sturdivant, you teased us. Let's see if we can get something. I'm afraid of what that is going to do. I'll try it. Oh, look at that. Oh, it's a preview. Oh, all right. That doesn't help me. Ooh, it's just going to give me the same kind of link, isn't it? A preview. Yep. Let's see. Can I get to it? Come on. Oh, curse you. Curse you. All right, let's give it. We got a few minutes, so let's see. Any of these. Smithsonian Institute. Is it going to be here? Ooh, download? No, 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 no. All right, let's see. Can I do this? Yes, I can do that. Sure. See and download my contacts. I don't have any contacts here anyway, so go ahead, academia. I want to choose free. I just wanted to get that article. Oh, you're killing me. I want to download you. I am. I did download. Oh, ow, come on. I want to download. I wish to download. Is this the article? All right, I got it. I got it. We're in. Oh, and it's up here. All right, cool. That page view isn't gonna. Oh yeah, let's do 2-page. You know, actually, I'm gonna do 1 page because I need to zoom in here. But there we go. Nice and easy. Okay, it took us a little while. Took us some doing, but we're there. The medieval weapon that never existed, the military flail. Anyone interested in the Middle Ages, from amateur to professor, likely knows what a military flail is. It's one of the most iconic weapons of the period. It has a short handle, about the length of a forearm, a long chain and a spiked head at the end of it, and wielded with one hand. They are everywhere. Films, museums, reproduction weapons shops, they also never existed. Like all medieval weapons, they are called many different things in English. Some call them morning stars, some chain maces, in German Kriegsflegel, in French flot d'armes. Knightly heroes faced them down in films. Robert Taylor faced one in a duel in Ivanhoe, as did Charlton Heston in El Cid. Orlando Bloom was nearly assassinated by one in Kingdom of Heaven, and even the Black Knight in Monty Python and the Holy Grail dispatched an opponent wielding one. Museums like the Metropolitan Museum of Art and the Deutsche Historische Museum have them in their collections, and if you fancy owning one, reproductions are commonly sold in collectible shops and Renaissance fairs. The only problem with all this is that this kind of flail never existed. It was never held by knights, never used in the Middle Ages in Western Europe, and never used either as a dueling or battlefield weapon. That is not to say that flails in general never existed. A long-handled flail was, and in some societies remains, an instrument for threshing wheat in use since the ancient Egyptians. In medieval Europe, flails had a long pole handle, a hinge of leather, rope, or metal, and a forearm-sized baton attached, as seen in the Loutrell Psalter. Beginning in the 15th century, Hussite revolutionaries turned these implements into polearms. These war flails had the same long handle, but the baton head was enhanced with studs, spikes, or iron cladding, or replaced entirely with a spiked head. This turned it into what John Waldman, in his 2005 book, Hafted Weapons in Medieval and Renaissance Europe, calls a Ketten Morgenstern, chain morningstar, a two-handed chained morningstar. These are attested, though very rare. This line of development from peasant instrument to improvised weapon to military hardware is rather clear. These are also not what I'm talking about. A chief feature throughout its development is that this was always wielded two-handed. This is not to say that short whips never existed. Whips, often with several heads sporting barbs or weights, have been used as instruments of self-mortification, punishment, crowd control, or to goad animals since the beginning of history. I really like the idea of whips for crowd control. I might have to use that at some point. They are also not what I'm talking about. The weapon type I am discussing is exemplified by a beautiful piece from the Metropolitan Museum of Art's collection, page 53 below. Made entirely of steel, it has a handle nearly 60 centimeters long, a heavy chain almost 20 centimeters, and a head with 5 vicious spikes. I'll have to check this out. I guess we'll see it later on. But there is an illustration of a... But it looks like he's got it in the two hands, right? So maybe that's how we got to look at it, two-handed. However, this piece is a perfect example of the weapon for other reasons too. This piece was originally thought to be medieval, but after questioning of the piece's authenticity, the museum's catalog now lists it as probably mid to late 19th century in style of 16th century. None of the military flails held by the Met are currently on display. That's a bummer. Military historians have questioned the veracity of the one-handed military flail for generations. Philip Warner, in his 1968 Sieges of the Middle Ages, wrote bluntly that all existing examples of this weapon were quote-unquote fakes. Kelly DeVries and Robert Douglas Smith were a bit more measured in their 2012 book, Medieval Military Technology. A quote from that book follows, "This ball and chain weapon has attracted a great deal of comment from modern historians, some claiming that it existed while others dismissing it as a fantasy. It was likely that a weapon like this was used but was not common. Let's look at the evidence for and against the one-handed military flail's existence. But when doing so, it's important to balance two factors. First, it is far more difficult, perhaps even impossible, to prove a negative. It takes only one truly indisputable piece of evidence for its existence to conclusively prove that it did exist. But conversely, just because we may want something to have existed in a particular time, place, or way, does not mean that the universe has to play along. Just because something theoretically could have happened and left no trace does not make a valid argument for its existence. And expanding upon that a bit, even if a small number exists, that does not mean that they were at all common or widely adopted. To begin with, we can dispense with the vast majority of the Western European Middle Ages entirely. There is zero evidence for the one-handed military flail's existence prior to the 15th century. There are no examples in museums, no battlefield archaeology, no armory inventories, no chronicle accounts, no manuscript illustrations, nothing. Considering the comparable numbers of swords, spears, axes, maces, daggers, and all manner of other weapons dating from the 5th to 14th centuries in evidence, this absence is strange and striking. The first pieces of evidence for the flail come from the first half of the 15th century in the form of two manuscript illustrations. In a 1410 illustration of the travels of Marco Polo, a military flail is clearly seen in two illustrations. In one, tucked into the belt of a Mameluke. In the other, a horseman from the Middle East is using one to kill an opponent. The other source is from an illustration in Conrad Kaiser's treatise Bellefortis, the first manual of military technology. There, a knight is shown parading with a flail over his shoulder whilst pulling a bizarre war wagon. Among fantastical depictions of rockets and demon-headed siege engines, see also some other magazines or other, whatever you call it, issues. Thank you. My brain going crazy there for a minute. See other issues of medieval warfare. If this marked the development of a new weapon type, you would see more and more depictions of the flail in combat as its appearance in armory records, literature, chronicles, or fighting manuals. But none of that occurred. Nor have any such weapons been unearthed by battlefield archaeologists for the rest of the Middle Ages. All of the earliest one-handed flails stored in museums are from the 16th century. They are also highly ornamental, which makes it likely they were used as ornamental or ceremonial weapons rather than on the battlefield. It is clear that in the 16th century, the idea of these weapons had taken hold, even if they were likely never deployed on the battlefield. But where did the idea come from? From that, we can look at where one-handed flails did exist during the Middle Ages, on the steppes of Eastern Europe and Asia. Since the 1960s, Eastern European archaeologists have been finding evidence of what scholars call kistin in Russian or bijak in Slovak. Several hundred flail heads, typically only their heads remain, have been found by archaeologists. The earliest have been found in horsemen's graves from the Avar Khaganate in the modern-day Balkans, 5th to 8th century. In the 1960s, Russian scholar A.N. Kirpichnikov cataloged 127 of them dating from the 10th to 14th centuries and made of bone, iron, or bronze. They have been found in Russia, the Balkans, Poland, Germany, and as far north as Finland, but no further west than this. They've also been depicted in Eastern manuscripts, albeit very rarely, as far back as the 13th century Radzivit Chronicle. Kistins are definitely one-handed military flails, though they have a few unique features that makes them distinct from the flail archetype seen in films and video games. For one, these were not the weapons of knights or footmen, but were rather in the arsenal of steppe warriors and horse archers. For example, a kistin is clearly depicted in the 16th century Rerum Moscoviticarum Commentarii, or Commentarii, Notes on Muscovite Affairs by Baron Sigismund von Herberstein. The kistin there, let's see, I just want to see this photo. Is that where's the flail in this photo? Oh, there it is. All right, there. The kistin here hangs among many weapons in the Muscovite horse archer's arsenal: curved swords, bows, arrows, an axe, and mace. This particular kistin is said to be of a type used by the Mongols by Valerie Ann Kivelson and Joan Neuberger in their 2008 book, Picturing Russia. This Mongolian-style kistin head is smooth and attached to its haft with what looks like rope or leather. The vast majority of the kistin heads found by archaeologists fit this mold. The heads are smooth, some with decorations, quite large in bone but smaller in metal. For example, those found in Germany were only 4 centimeters long. And all indications are that this was a secondary weapon, used when the bow, spear, and sword were unavailable, cheap to make and maintain. This may go some way towards explaining where the idea of the one-handed flail originated in late medieval or early modern Western Europe. The fact that the first depiction of the flail was in the travels of Marco Polo seems less coincidental. The illustrator may have heard stories of the strange, to them, weapons used by those in the East, and in an early stroke of Orientalism, blended the exotic with a familiar context, knights using spiked and flanged steel flails rather than steppe warriors using smooth ones of rope and iron. The westernized one-handed flail is an incredibly unwieldy weapon and supremely impractical on the battlefield. The head is just too large and heavy to control effectively with one hand. The end result offers few advantages in a world of pike and shot over a good sword or stout mace. But they persisted in the imagination and bloomed in popularity during the resurgence of interest in the Medievalia in the 19th century. This means the one-handed flail could be an example of what French philosopher Jean Baudrillard called simulacra, copies of something that had no original. If it is a simulacrum, the original inventors were not weaponsmiths but illustrators. The weaponsmiths who made them in the 16th, 19th, or 20th, 21st century were copying a bastardized idea rather than a thing. Its realist life has been its afterlife. And we do have that illustration of, I guess, maybe the flail that's in the Metropolitan Museum, maybe. In either case, the flail persists in the imagination because it has the attributes people popularly ascribe to the Middle Ages. It is dangerous, unpredictable, unwieldy, and uncivilized. So Walter Scott deployed this idea when he put a flail into the hands of an unhinged crusader in his 1825 novel, The Talisman. I am Theodoric of Engaddi, he said. I am the walker of the desert. I am friend of the cross and flail of all infidels, heretics, and devil worshippers. So saying, he pulled from under his shaggy garment a sort of flail or jointed club, bound with iron, which he brandished around his head with singular dexterity. Thou seest thy saint, said the Saracen, laughing for the first time at the unmitigated astonishment with which Sir Kenneth looked on the wild gestures and heard the wayward muttering of Theodoric, who, after swinging his flail in every direction, apparently quite reckless whether it encountered the head of either of his companions, finally showed his own strength and the soundness of the weapon by striking into fragments a large stone which lay near him. This is a madman, said Sir Kenneth. The flail is not a weapon so much as an icon, and came into being as a misinterpretation of the weaponry of another culture and continues to exist as a misinterpretation of the Middle Ages. It vividly paints the Middle Ages not as it was, but as we believe it to have been. The most fascinating thing about this weapon is that it exists at all. Elfbait says, so in short, there is room in fantasy spaces for such a weapon because something along its lines existed in real life. I think so. Elfbait, though, would be interesting because clearly it's not the way it would appear, say, in this illustration. Something with a very small head, no spikes, not a metal chain, but more likely something leather holding it, and then it's two-handed. Or actually not two-handed in the one sense, and then on the step it was one-handed. It would be I think it would be very cool. Well, this one's got a chain, or I don't know if it's a chain or just leather links, but maybe it's the other one is leather. Anyway, it would be cool to do is to really take a look at this and say, can we return it closer to its roots? I think one thing this article doesn't go into, which I would have liked to have known, is what was the use case for it. So amongst the step, okay, it's your secondary or tertiary weapon. Was it just how we envision it, where you're just spinning it, thwacking people in the head? Was there another use case for it? Like, why the flail over a dagger, let's say, as your secondary, tertiary weapon? So it might be, and maybe that information is out there. Maybe there are tales, if we were to go look more closely at, say, steppe stories from the steppe and legends and traditions that might still be around. What did they use it for? But it seems it's not like Lord of the Rings, which the Witch King has some massive flail that they're spinning around. That's not a thing that happens. So very cool. I mean, yeah, ultimately it is a fantasy game, and so do we need to be bound by the fact that flails, one-handed military flails, as we see in a lot of popular culture, don't exist? Or no, we can, it is so because we make it so. But it's interesting to think about, well, maybe there's a different kind of flail we could think about in our games. One that is will be almost unique in terms of the fiction of our games, simply because we've been going down this one pathway with the flail. What if you went somewhere where instead of taking your dagger in town, you're walking around or wherever you are, and in terms of you've kind of been disarmed, but you're allowed sort of one little weapon, a dagger? What if people had flails instead in a certain culture, that you didn't have the dagger, but they whip out a little flail? And was that what it was used for, or was it used for something else? Did it have multiple purposes, like a dagger being a knife? I don't know, but it would be neat to find out. Elfbait says fair, but as a fantasy extrapolation, yeah, like I said, I don't think there's anything wrong with doing it, but it's interesting what we extrapolated, and it might be neat to go in the other direction and say, if we take this look at the flail, can we extrapolate some new and different things from it than just what we've got? It says this isn't a weapon. This is just a humble farming implement. Yeah, exactly. Or maybe just saying in our games, like maybe making flails more like this, or more two-handers and not stuff. I'll have to look at that Hussars ones, see kind of what they look like. And I definitely want to look more at what these Mongolian and other kind of steppe one-handed flails were like. All right, well, that took us past the hour, so that was good. So we got two things done today. We looked at Helm. There's a link to that in the show notes, in the descriptions. If you're interested in Helm, it's $7.50. I'm really curious to see kind of what else comes with that. It's on itch if you're looking for it. I don't think it's on. I looked for it on drive-through the other day and I didn't see it, so I don't know if they're waiting to publish it on drive-through or if they're just going to use itch as their marketplace. And then we got to take a little sidebar trek at looking at the one-handed military flail. Elfbase says, I think the closest I can think of were the blackjacks as personal attack defense. Yeah, maybe. I mean, definitely. You don't want to be. I mean, that could be a really good point. That you want a weapon that's going to help knock somebody out, but a flapjack, you got to be really, or blackjack, I should say, not a flapjack. Blackjack, you got to get pretty close with one of these little flails. Feels like you can get further away. You have some room for error, and you can still certainly build up the kind of force you need by swinging it around. So it might be an interesting thing about. Maybe some thieves in some worlds will use small flails as kind of knockouts, or in other words, to bludgeon somebody. And certainly if people are walking around in heavy armor, a dagger might be tough. Again, you can get it in between plates of armor and whatnot, but you got to be really close. Whereas maybe a nice compact flail that's just tucked into your belt, you could deploy that to good effect. So some interesting things. So there's some more rabbit holes we can go down, but that's all I got for today. Everybody, if you're still in here, if you want to, before you exit out, if you give this a thumbs up, that would be awesome. If you're not subscribed, subscribing would also be awesome. Other than that, have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on, and I'll talk to you later.